Hi, I'm Preston Williams, and welcome to another edition of Jazz Talk. Today on our show, we are joined by one of the greatest musicians in jazz today. This gentleman has been on the scene for over 40 years and has worked with many greats from Betty Carter to Johnny Griffin, John Hicks, Art Blakey, Carmen Lundy, and Bobby Watson, to name a few. He is a bassist, composer, producer, and choir director. Please welcome to Jazz Talk the legend himself, Mr. Curtis Lundy. Sir, how are you?
I'm great, Preston. Thank you.
Good, good.
I feel a little different with somebody calling me a legend, but
But you are, man. You're a bad cat. You definitely are one of the cats. And I appreciate you coming on Jazz Talk today. You know, Curtis, as I said, you've been on the scene, man, for quite a long time. Now, I understand that you're originally from Miami, Florida. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay. And I'm just interested in knowing more about your humble beginnings and your background. Now, I understand that you come from a big family. It's like 7 of you guys. And of course, talked about your sister, Carmen, earlier, who's one of the greatest vocalists in jazz music today. But I'm interested more in your background, how you got involved in music, because I understand that you're originally a drummer.
Well, yeah, I was originally in the percussion section of
Yeah.
a junior high school band, and it kind of came the way things happen in life. It's all life lessons. But I was in the band from I would say from 6th to the 8th grade, and at that time, my band director his name was Mr. Valentine.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there's a colleague of yours, Michael Valentine, is his son, who is on WDNA in Miami.
Okay.
But his father was my band director, and he was a brilliant band director.
Mm.
But he was also a disciplinarian, and so he warned me about what we used to call jazzing. It's ironic, jazzing up the music. In other words, getting away from the script, not playing what was on the paper.
Yeah.
Because at that time we basically played the same. A lot of Sousa marches. And Battle Hymn of the Republic. I can still, rap off the drum part. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
so I got tired of playing that. Me and a few of my other partners, and so we used to, like I said, collectively do what's called jazzing it up. So after enough jazzing it up, he couldn't take it no more, and he put all of us out of the band. Okay, and they had to create a special class for us, which was, they call it graphic design, and we basically went in there and learned how to do different things. But that was my short-lived career of playing in the percussion set. And I was, I had really, good technique and everything, but
Yeah.
music is discipline as well. So that being said, I was put out of the band with my partners, and that then coming soon would be Christmas. And so I asked my mother, at that time, it's no Santa Claus and everything. So your mom and dad, I tell you to make out a Christmas list. You know what I mean? So I make out my list, and on my list is a bass guitar. Originally on my list was I wanted a mini bike or a motorcycle, a little motor scooter, dirt bike or whatever.
Right.
Mom wasn't having that, so she saw, because they would tell you, well, what's your first choice, your second choice, whatever. So my second choice was the bass.
Mm.
So my mother, being, God bless her, being as she was an amazing woman, and so being just ahead of her time in so many ways, but being who she was, she found me a bass guitar. And so under the Christmas tree that year was a bass guitar for me, and was it a brand name and all that? No, but it had 4 strings, and it was shiny, and it played and it worked. And so I was so happy. And I started teaching myself. And by the way, when I started, this is to show you how real it was. My grandfather made my first amplifier.
What?
Yeah, you know, because, you know, I mean, 7 kids, my mom, you know, she was doing good just to get me the bass.
Right, right, right.
So she went to her dad, who could do, you know, my grandfather, I felt, could do anything and fix anything and do anything. This cat made me an amplifier.
Wow.
You know, out of you know, I guess a radio and a speaker and some kind of way he hooked it up. And that was my first amplifier. So I just stayed at home and after school, just practicing and, you know, trying to teach myself how to play to Jameson and
Yeah,
all the cats, you know, who were originally upright players anyway.
that's right.
So, you know, teaching myself how to play and just listening and learning. And then, you know, at one point I got to a point where I said, well, maybe I should try to start to get a band. And so or try to join a band. So I started talking to some of my other friends who were starting to play instruments and things. And sure enough, we were able to start a little neighborhood band. You know, they call them garage bands now, but you know.
You guys were basically playing the music, Curtis, of like the time, like what, Kool and the Gang, Earth, Wind and Fire, whatever was happening.
That was, well, yeah. I mean, you kind of hit it right on the head. More everything from early Isley Brothers to Kool and the Gang, because we knew the whole Live at the PJ's record.
Yeah.
Get to that, the Chocolate Buttermilk and all that stuff, you know. So yeah, you know, and I remember John W. Coltrane.
Yeah.
I remember those tunes, you know. You know, do you remember those? You know,
I do. Yeah.
So, well, you know, I'm 65, so that might be a little.
You don't look it, man. You don't look it.
Okay. So anyway, yeah, we were learning all that stuff, and especially real hard on Brown, James.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You got to get on the one, man. On the one.
You got to be, you know. And you know, and so I'm from Miami, which we're known for the bottom. You know, we're the bottom, and we're about the bass. You know,
right.
So it just all kind of worked out. So anyway, I started playing in my little local band, and lo and behold, we started getting gigs. You know, So I guess everybody kind of was up to their game enough where people thought we sounded good enough, and we started getting gigs.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I guess I'm around 14, 15 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
And we, the gigs that we had, it's crazy, but they were kind of really good gigs for that time. Like we would play at the Officers Club on the base, on Homestead Air Force Base, and do all the different functions. And then back at that time, talent shows, just like with the Jackson 5 and everybody else, talent shows were really popular.
Right.
You would get paid to play at talent shows if your band was good enough,
Yeah, yeah.
We used to do the talent shows, and there was a circuit of clubs in Miami that were just, that were serious in the hood, serious spots, like, to name a few, one like the Jetaway, the Galaxy Club, T to Green, the spot down in South Day, in Homestead, the Top Cat.
Top Cat, okay.
Yeah, it was, and that was like, don't let me forget the Sir John, the Night Beat.
Okay.
That's where Cannonball Adderley, I'm giving you a little history of Miami.
Ooh.
That's where Cannonball Adderley was basically discovered. He was playing at this spot because that's when Overtown, which is, now you go to Miami and you'll see historic Overtown, and they do the Milton Mustafa Jazz Festival there at the Lyric Theater, which they totally redid. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm kind of giving you a little history of my background, and like you said, in my humble beginnings. So
yeah,
kind of where I kind of developed my craft, playing at those spots with my band and cat bands that we had together with my partners.
Mm-hmm.
Really excellent musicians at the time. My good and still longtime friend David Green, who's a guitarist and an excellent writer, great songwriter. And you know, some of the guys are no longer with us, but yeah, we had some really good musicians. To the tune that after when I first met Bobby, I asked him to play with my band, and for a hot minute he did, and then we kind of morphed the band out of that band into a band with my sister. So, so that's kind of. But going back to, so I kind of developed this whole thing of playing and learning how to play for people.
Yeah.
Playing music, because that's kind of a missing element sometimes, I think, in the music, is that, you know, sometimes, and people may, you know, seem to differ, you know, with me on this one, but sometimes I feel like musicians are playing for other musicians instead of, and you kind of missing that connect, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, Art Blakey, you know, used to say, if people can't walk away from your set humming a tune that they heard, then you didn't accomplish your job.
Man, that's so true. You know, I wanted to ask you also, Curtis. Now you started getting into upright when you got into high school, didn't you? The upright bass.
Well, it was kind of accident. It kind of accidentally happened that way, and what really happened was, you know, I was playing football at the time.
Right.
You're in Miami, and you look like you can, you know, run, catch, or throw. You're gonna play football.
Right.
I was on the football team in high school, and I was. We had at that time, I think we may have had tour days, and my sister was singing in this group called the Killian Singers. Like for the lack of a better way of saying it, like a vocal group, glee club, if you will, whatever. And so they had some tunes that they were doing. A lot of times they were doing stuff like the Fifth Dimension stuff, but with a choral arrangement, you know, let the sun shine, you know.
Right.
I played with him a couple of times, you know, and was lugging my bass back and forth to school. And I was like, no, forget about this. So I saw this upright in the corner over, you know, in the music room.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, you know, let me whip this out, you know, thinking I could just get on it and try to deal. And it wasn't happening. I got the biggest business that I ever got.
Right.
I tried to make it happen, and I tried to, you know, try to facilitate enough to play behind this vocal group. And that was my first experience with it. But, you know, and because it was a challenging instrument, I didn't realize, you know, the electric bass is like butter.
Yeah.
Playing the upright, especially if you play with any kind of tension on the instrument and any kind, and you want to try to really get a good sound without the amplifier. So that being said, I you know, I got to delve in it a little bit there, and that was kind of the beginnings of it. And then the next step is I'm out of high school now, and I still got my band, still doing that, and I got to make a decision. Am I going to really try to be serious about playing football, or am I going to be serious about music? So I chose music, and I said, you know, but if I'm going to play, I want to be a professional. Just like I felt like if I played ball, if you know, my thing was, am I going to be, you know, am I going to go to the NFL? Well, it might be hard, you know, but I can be a professional musician, you know, and so that's, that was really the simple logic that I took at the time.
Yeah. You ended up going to University of Miami, man, and so many great musicians have come out of there. You know, when I interviewed your sister, Carmen was telling me, you know, all the people that were there, like Bruce Hornsby, Bobby Watson, Jaco Pastorius, Pat Metheny, I think, taught there. So many great musicians. Were you there with all those people during that time?
Yeah, Pat wasn't teaching there. Pat was a student, just like all of us.
Student, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Then there was a lot of other guys that like Hiram Bullock.
Yeah, guitarist Hiram Bullock.
Don't forget Hiram. Hiram was a monster.
Yeah.
Hiram was one of the best quote unquote jazz guitarists that I've ever heard. So people they don't even know. Hiram was a complete monster.
Wow. Amazing.
I mean, seriously. Hiram was one of the best jazz guitarists that I've ever heard.
You know, one of the things that I noticed, Curtis, it seems like everyone that came from there are great composers too. All of those musicians that I named. And I know that you were friends. You worked a little bit or studied with Jaco Pastorius. How'd you meet Jaco, man, and get to work with him?
Well, you know, Jaco and I, we first met. It's crazy. The first time we met, it was just me and him. It was always just kind of me and him.
Right.
And he like, I heard about you, and I said, yeah, I heard about you too. You know, and and I said, but you know, but he was. They just kind of like hired Jaco. They took liberty and hired Jaco, and he had like a bass a class of just, I guess a master class or a class that was just all basis, and we would just go to the class and exchange ideas and work on reading and work on different things, and you know, but most of the time it would be Jaco just getting it in. You know? so this one time when he first met me, it was just me and him getting it in. You know what I'm saying? And so that was always kind of our interaction sometimes, you know, because Jaco came from the same place that I came from. He played with Wayne Cochran, you know, in a group called the CC Riders.
Riders, yeah.
Right, which was, Wayne was known as the Black James Brown.
Exactly.
So that's why he had all those funky licks down and all that stuff that Bootsy and all the cats from Brown played. And that's, you know, that helped him develop his sense of time and sense of feel, you know, and you know, and kept it real. That he, you know, and he knew where it all came from. So he, you know, he was cool with that. You know what I'm saying?
You know, Curtis, Hiram Bullock told an interesting story. He said, you know, they talk about Jaco Pastorius and Weather Report and the later stuff. And even Pat Metheny said he was actually better before then. He says what he displayed on the instrument back then, he never really showed that again. And I know you guys were friends, and I think Carmen told me you guys even shared the same bass sometimes too.
Well, yeah, we had a session one night at 55 grand.
Yeah.
Jaco and I kind of, you know, did our alone together thing again, you know. But to talk about what Pat and Hiram alluded to, I just, you know, yes and no, because some of that stuff he did, you know, some of that stuff he did with Weather Report was in there. You know, it was in there, but he had a different thing, because you gotta remember it was a little bit more humility when he was on the local scene and was hanging out with us. Like I said, you know, we all used to get down. I mean, hard, you know, because Hiram could really play some good bass too. You know, and people, you know, Jaco was a guitar player first.
Yeah.
See, so, you know, so that's another reason why his harmonic sense was so keen, and he could, you know, he could hear all of the things that he was hearing at the time, you know, and you know, so yeah, that's kind of, you know, so in the time and the generation of musicians that I come from, we all learn from each other, and you know, and if you had something I wanted, I took it and used it. If you had something if I had something you wanted, you took it and used it. And that's the way, that's the way we did it. That's the way we shared,
And Curtis, as far as developing, I understand that you also studied a little bit with Ron Carter and Cecil McBee as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, even if you take, for me, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 lessons with those guys,
yeah,
the wealth of knowledge that they give you, is I mean, it's priceless.
yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention my first teacher at the UM on the upright bass.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's where I really got serious about the upright bass.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was my first teacher, Lucas Drew.
Lucas Drew. Okay.
All right. The reason why he was still and is and will always be so important, Lucas Drew. I was so fortunate to study with this man. This man is, if what we call the Bible of bass study, the Samando book. Okay, if you look on that book, you'll see edited by Lucas Drew. So that shows you this man's knowledge of the instrument.
Yeah.
Okay. This is by Zimmerman. He's editing the master's work.
Right.
So he was he was and is one of the finest that ever picked the instrument up.
Wow.
So I was so fortunate, along with my colleague as well, that I'd like to mention too, Benjamin Brown. Brown. I don't know if you know Brent. Ben.
I'm not familiar with him.
You should interview Ben.
Okay.
Ben is one of the cats. Ben was the cat also that kept pushing me to go play the wood. That's what he used to say to me: play the wood.
Yeah.
And this cat was a monster. Is a monster. Ben Brown. Ben, along with Tom Barney, both of those guys, they were first called to sub for Bob Cranshaw. Right. Bob, you gotta remember Bob had all the gigs, including Sesame Street.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, all that people don't realize, all that Sesame Street stuff, that's Bob Cranshaw.
Bob Cranshaw's on everything, man. A lot of Blue Note recordings. Sonny Rollins, longtime bass player. He's on everything, man.
Yeah. So, and so, so getting back to studying with those guys that you named, though, I learned so much in the brief time that I studied with Ron, just about how to maneuver on the instrument in a way that that was efficient. Really learning how to be efficient.
Yeah.
That's I mean, there's so many things I learned from. I learned focus, real focus and real focus.
Yeah.
Cecil McBee, sound and dexterity in a different kind of way. You gotta remember, these guys are all unique in their approach to the instrument and how they play, and that's why they're recognizable. Which is what you're trying to achieve as a jazz musician. You're trying to be recognizable.
Yeah.
Somebody hears you say, they say, "Wow, is that Curtis?" That's what I want people, to.
Right. And very few musicians can do that, Curtis. We were talking about that the other week with pianist, talking about Chick Corea, and saxophonist Donald Harrison said, you can hear just a few notes from the very beginning, you know that that's Chick. So very few people can do that on an instrument to get that singular sound that you know that's them, you know?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about Bobby Watson, man. You two are like this, and you guys go way, way back. How did you meet Bobby Watson, man?
Well, I was walking through the practice rooms at the U, and I heard this cat, going in on the horn, and so I walk in there, and this guy's got this Dr. J afro, and he's really playing well.
Yeah.
So and I was like, man, you can play, man. What's your name? So I introduced myself, and at the time I was commuting from home, because I lived in South Miami.
Right.
Okay, and the University of Miami, as we call it, the U, was in Coral Gables.
Okay.
Okay, for people who don't know, Coral Gables is one of the most affluent, at that time especially, one of the most affluent areas in Florida. Okay, and the University of Miami is a private university as well.
Yeah.
So, as I said, I was commuting, almost every day, going back and forth to school. And at one time, my car broke down. Like, man, I can't do this. So I may have slept in the car 1 or 2 nights, trying to stay on top of it and stay in school and do what I had to do. And after a couple of nights, that just wasn't working out. Even in Miami, where you actually could do it, but
yeah,
I was like, no. So I started I started sleeping in the lounge of the dormitory where Bobby was a RA, was a resident assistant. So he was like the cat who controlled the floor. Everybody had to come, report to him, and maybe sometimes sign in or make sure everybody was in the dorm or whatever.
Right.
I think that was maybe part of his scholarship or work study. Back then, because at this time, this is another thing that you have to understand about being at the University of Miami that time. We were what's called the first 500.
Mm.
Okay? The first 500 African Americans to be, to study at the University of Miami. So
Okay.
we were a part of that whole thing as well. You know what I mean? And that was during the time of the Upward Bound program.
Yeah.
That,
Upward Bound. Oh yeah, I'm familiar with that, man. Yeah.
So anyway, so I met Bobby in the practice room, like I said, and so I said, man, this guy can play, and I said, man, maybe I'm gonna try to get him to play with my band, and that's like I told you. So I got him to play with my band for a few gigs, and he really tightened my horn section up like 1, 2, 3, and we did some things, played a few gigs and everything, and that was cool. But once again, at this point, things had gotten to a level where I was trying to play with, for the lack of another way of saying it, better musicians.
Yeah.
And people who, because at the same time, I was still trying to learn. I'm still trying to learn how to play. Most of these cats at the U that time, they were blazing already. You know what I mean? So I'm playing catch up, all along. And so, but I had a feel and I had an understanding of the music.
Mm.
It's like a basketball player. He may not be the high scoring man or whatever that may be, but he has a basketball IQ. So,
yeah.
So I kind of feel like I had an IQ for what made music work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's important being a bass player. That's one of the things that I learned from Ron too,
Yeah.
Just that really, he instilled he instilled that on with me, studying with him and just listening to him, you know. Yeah. So
That's incredible.
um, um, and I also would like to mention I studied with a very very excellent classical teacher here in New York. Her name was
Mhm.
Edna McKnight.
Okay.
Yeah, she played with the Metropolitan Opera, and I was I I forget who recommended her, but she was excellent in giving me some other things fundamentally, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that was I kind of I didn't want to forget her, you know.
No, that's excellent. I'm glad that you share that. And Curtis, I want to know, man, how in the world did you get the gig to play with Betty Carter, man? That's incredible. Working with a giant like that. And I've talked to so many musicians, man, who's worked with her, talked about, man, how it was frightening at first and how she was very, very giving to young musicians. But how'd you get to work with her, man? And what was that like?
Man, it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow.
If I, because it was put up or shut up time,
Right.
and it was also the best learning experience that I could have ever asked for in terms of learning how to be an accompanist,
Yeah.
learning how to support, somebody. Like I said, I could use the analogy of a basketball team. Sometimes you got to just, somebody just has to distribute the ball. Somebody, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can't shoot all the time, or it doesn't work. So, you got, and that's how you have to learn how to be a supporting cast member in the whole scheme of things, and so that's something that Betty taught not only me, but anybody who who came in contact with her. But that gig was it changed everything for me. Because once Betty gave you the seal of approval, it was like Art Blakey giving it to you. It was like uh, Horace Silver. It was like any of the cats giving you that seal of approval. Betty was considered, one of the cats. She was the kitten. She was, she was it. And very respected and revered. I mean, I could name you some of the rhythm sections. I give you one that that I knew about: John Hicks, Idris Muhammad, and Paul Chambers.
My gosh, man. Wow.
I mean, you look at some of the records with Philly Joe playing.
Yeah.
I mean, so Jack. I mean, and a lot of the cats that cats don't cats don't know about their first gigs. Billy Hart.
Mm.
Betty brought him out of D.C.
Wow.
Okay, Jack DeJohnette. First gigs with Betty.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, the list goes on. You know what I'm saying? So we're not just talking about my generation. We're talking about so. Yeah, I mean, I learned so much about music, about the business of an independent African American, especially woman and person in the music business,
Yeah.
in the record business. Um, you know, but on the bandstand, I learned so much um, from her and how how to get to how to get people to listen to what you're trying to say,
Mm-hmm.
and to get people to respect the music and respect the fact that you put your life into this art form. And so when you're presenting it, it's like going to a museum. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Just
Yeah.
think about it like that. Sometimes you go to the museum and you walk around and you're just in awe of the creation
Mm-hmm.
that a person that could put, colors to canvas and make you look at it in awe and wonder. Well, in the same way, music does that.
Yeah.
From even more ways, and just as many, if not more ways, because the power of sound is unbelievable. And we what we do is audio visual, so it is kind of a step up as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And also, man, you work with, we just mentioned him, Art Blakey, man. What was it like working with Art Blakey?
Well, I was actually on loan
Oh, really?
from Betty to Art Blakey.
Oh, wow.
and and then later on I get the story that Betty used to call while we were on the road with Art. Betty used to call like every 2 or 3 days to make sure that Art wasn't trying to take me but yeah, that was because of my relationship, of course, with Bobby, and also Dennis Irwin, who was at the time playing with Bobby. And Dennis was the one who actually recommended me for the gig with Betty.
Mm.
So that's once again, and I have to say at that time, I would have to mention that playing with Betty at that time, John Hicks and Kenny Washington.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely helped me to develop, in rapid transit, kind of way, because, my first 6 months to almost a year in New York, I basically played with most of the cats on the avant-garde scene. Yeah, if you check out chronologically what was going on at the time. When I came to New York, the loft scene was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when Sam Rivers had his loft, and Jolie Wilson had what he called the Ladies' Fort. Uh, uh, Mark Morganelli had the jazz. What was it called? Oh man, I forget the name of his spot.
Didn't Rashid Ali have something too? Rashid Ali?
Ali had
Yeah.
Ali's Alley was
Yeah.
the spot. Yeah. So all the cats had lost, and what was happening is New York was at that time, they had some kind of thing going on with the real estate in New York, that if you occupied a loft space and you fixed it up and everything, it was like a lottery. They were like almost giving away some of these loft spaces.
Wow.
Oh yeah, and it was happening down in the village, and later on actually up in Harlem as well. But at that time, definitely the loft scene. So there were a lot of avant-garde bands that were really doing well within that thing, and also at this time, the Europeans were buying into it also, to the avant-garde scene and the free music scene. And for sure there's some cats that had legitimate voice in what that was doing, and what that was saying. And it also gave me a different perspective on music is not just this way or that way, but it's every way,
Yeah.
So, and that, like they say now, get in where you fit in. Well, that was really what was happening when you played in some of those situations. And but once again, I learned a lot, because at the time, Bobby and I used to go through intense practicing and listening sessions.
Mm.
I mean, equally shared the listening sessions with because the listening sessions really gave us the broad perspective of what the music had to offer, So we listened to everybody from Adderley to Eiler, to Braxton, to Bird, to Train, to to Ornette Coleman. We listened to everything, if I'm honest though, we stayed in the hard bop and the bop and the real, hardcore,
Yeah.
where we wanted to be, or who we want to be associated with. Because you got to remember, this is all before YouTube and all that. So
That's right.
all we had was album covers to dream about,
Right.
and look and to look at. And so, can you imagine, looking and reading on these album covers and then actually getting to New York and playing with these cats, man?
I can't, man.
It was, I mean, I still get, a little excited just thinking about it, that I was actually there. Since I mentioned that, I want to say something about that particular fact.
Yeah.
The people of my generation, like Bobby, myself, and people like, late great Ralph Peterson, and
Yeah.
um, all of us, Jerry Allen, and
Wallace Rooney.
Wallace, and all the people that were on the scene at that time, Don Harrison, and but at that time, those guys were still in college when I first started playing with Bobby and Betty. Okay, but the point is that all those guys of the, let's say, mid 50s to 70s generation, I would definitely consider what's called the missing link. And why do I say that? Because we were the guys and we were the generation that played, lived, breathed, ate, slept with the masters.
Yeah.
The true masters of this music. And nobody can take that away from us. And unlike the way we somewhat paid homage to them and were somewhat sponges to what they had to give and offer us, that's kind of, to use the word missing again, that's missing, that's a disconnect to me as a whole. There's some exceptions, but as a whole, to the next generation, we would jump at the opportunity to use and work with and get them to be a part of our situation, our band, if you will. Look at Roy, as far as, how, God bless Roy. Roy, Larry Willis on piano.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? He always had a veteran in the band to keep that lineage going through,
Exactly.
And some of, a lot of the young musicians, they seem to look past what we have to offer, in terms of even mentorship, because that's basically what all of the cats were doing to us, and they were mentoring us on how to be band leaders, how to be real musicians, how to, and how to be more than musicians, artists.
Yeah.
See, it's a difference. There's a difference, okay? And that's what separates the situation, okay? There's musicians, and then there's artists.
Artists. Man, and you played with just so many greats. I mean, your resume is unbelievable, Curtis. Johnny Griffin, and you played with Elvin Jones. I mean, what was it like playing with Elvin, man?
Oh, that was a dream come true. And I have to give props to the good brother Anthony Wanzi and Gerald Cannon, because Gerald was actually
Bassist Gerald Cannon.
Gerald couldn't make the gig, and Elvin was going to Japan for like a 2.5-week tour, and so they recommended me, and I was in heaven, because that was kind of like I played with Max, I played with Art, I played with I played with a lot of the really, really, really good drummers,
Yeah.
Just to name a few. But I hadn't played with Elvin, and
Yeah.
I wanted to play because okay, and I'm gonna shift back to that.
Sure.
I was playing on the avant-garde scene.
Yeah.
The band that I was playing with, that I basically did most of my work with, the first band that I, was in that band was Don Pullen.
Mm.
Right.
Oh, man.
This is
That's my man there, man.
exactly. Okay, so but this was Beaver Harris's band. Okay, 360 Degrees. Okay, and so so Don Pullen, Ricky Ford was in the band, Ken McIntyre, uh, myself, and Beaver. And so after about 2 gigs, I didn't know it at the time, but Jimmy Garrison's widow had came to the gig. And so lo and behold, Beaver calls me over to the house one day and he says, listen, take this is his address. You go over here and I want you to meet Jimmy's widow. And so I go over to the house, and Jimmy's widow gives me Jimmy Garrison's bass.
What?
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. It was, see, I'm just telling you, man, that's how New York was.
Like, let me ask you this, Curtis. Why do you think she did that? Was you think there was something in your playing that just made her maybe think of Jimmy, or like, this cat's got something, and she gave you the bass? Because that's incredible.
Well, the band that I was playing in, I took Jimmy's chair. It was Jimmy's. Jimmy played with that band.
Yeah.
Before he passed. Okay, and so I guess Beaver must have heard something, and it's so ironic. So at that time, like I told you, how Bobby and I was really students of the game, students.
Yeah.
So I used to read Leonard Feather's Encyclopedia of Jazz from cover to cover. And so I knew all the cats, where they were from, when they were born, what instrument they played before they played the instrument they play now, all of that stuff. Like Horace Silver was a tenor player first, and all of that kind of stuff. So I found out, but a lot of people don't to this day still know it, that Jimmy Garrison was born in Miami, Florida.
Never would have known that, man.
Everybody thinks he's from Philly, and he was raised after 12 years old in Philly, but he was born in Miami.
Mm.
And, when I asked Roberta Garrison, it was his wife's name, I asked her about that, and she said, "Oh yeah, he used to always talk about going down there to Aunt Jean's house or whatever, like whenever he was in Philly, because back in the day, just like in Florida, wherever you were from." In the summer, they would send you back there just so you could just not forget where you came from, and also connect with your relatives and keep that connection. So yeah. So I went off into that tangent about that.
No, that's beautiful, man. I'm glad you shared that.
But you were asking me
Yeah, we were talking about, I think I almost lost my train of thought too. I was talking about just some of the musicians you played with. We had talked about, of course.
Asking me about playing with Elvin.
Oh yeah. What was it like playing with Elvin Jones, man? Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, it was incredible, because that's like I said, it was once again, it shows you how these artists were so different in their craft.
Yeah.
How they were able to bring something totally unique to the music that will never happen again.
Never happen again.
See, that's what people forget about, this art, that it won't happen again, and so, and with that being said, Bobby and I were talking the other day, and I want to talk a little bit about how the music is underappreciated.
Yeah, please share that, man. I want to ask you about that, about jazz and what's happening with it right now. Where do you see it? And of course, yeah, being underappreciated. Please share.
Well, across the board, Madison Avenue basically sells us a lot of times what they want us to buy.
Yeah.
Okay. And for the longest, at one time, it was all right to buy jazz. Okay. But then for some reason, it's kind of like, well, you can't change. See, if you look at it, and I use the sports analogy a lot, you can't change the game of football.
Mm-hmm.
You can't change the game of basketball. You can't change the game of baseball. You can't change the game, but sometimes you can change the players.
Mm-hmm.
But in those particular sports, in those particular games, sometimes you can't even change the players. If you want to stay consistently on a winning team, the team needs to look like winners.
Mm-hmm.
And they got to play like winners. So when you look at the NBA, what does that look like? When you look at the NFL, what does that look like? When you look at the indigenous music of this American art form called jazz, what does it always look like? It doesn't always look like what's representative of the people who made it happen, who birthed it, who brought it into existence. Number one. Number two, all of a sudden, and everybody, I have no problem with the storytelling of country music and what it does and how people appreciate it. But if we would get 1/10 of the notoriety and the airtime that country music, there's no proposition whatever 48 about country music. But yet, and I'm kind of going full circle here, you get to the Grammys, we don't even see the light of day.
Yeah.
You got to go to the internet to find out who won in our categories. Okay. The music that influenced all of the music.
Mm-hmm.
The music that influenced all of the music. And, you know, and that's not just our music. That's across the board. I mean, even with the hip hop cast, I have to say, you know, a lot of us have survived on you know, cats sampling our music,
Right.
and you know, have been able to make things happen from that perspective. So, you know, I'm not trying or looking down my nose at any other genre, but I know that we should not be put on the back shelf, as it were, the way we are. Number one. Number two, just because the visibility of the music is at an all-time low, as far as I'm concerned, okay? There should be, you know, a concerted effort, you know, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
something about that on a national level. And that means that we got to take ownership of ourselves and really have the spirit of Umoja, where we really become unified within the ranks, you know, especially us, you know, that are what I consider the missing link.
Mm-hmm.
To network with one another and to come up with our own awards.
Yeah.
You know, we should have, just like the Latin Grammys, we should have our own Grammys.
Yeah.
We should have our own award shows for our music.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I have no problem with even partnering with the other music of culture, as it were, because you see, we're jazz is shifted into that, into both levels of notoriety and substance, as it were, when it comes to what it gives America. There's the cultural aspect of it, and then there's also the, for the lack of better term, for the entertainment level of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both the same, but they're kind of not the same, because there's an aesthetic to the other side of it that makes it on another, that makes it on another level.
Yeah.
Bird with Strings. Okay, I'll give you one example. Okay, I could go on, but you kind of get the gist of what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
man. Yeah, please, continue to share. Yeah, definitely, definitely. You just made me think of somebody when you mentioned Bird with Strings, someone who was influenced by him and that you had the opportunity to work with is the late, great Frank Morgan, great player.
Well, yeah, I played with Frank for years. I don't
Yeah.
know if you knew that, but I recorded several records with Frank and worked in his band for about 10 to 12 years straight through. I worked with Frank Morgan, one of my favorites.
Yeah, man, he's fantastic. And, pianists, I was thinking about pianists earlier. We were talking about John Hicks, who was great. You also work with Mulgrew Miller, fantastic musician, who's no longer with us.
Yeah,
And
Mulgrew was on Bobby and I's first record, Beatitudes.
yeah, Beatitude.
That was rhythm section. Mulgrew, Kenny Washington, and myself.
Beautiful.
That's my connection. My first connection, because Mulgrew was in Betty's band. I don't know if you knew that, but Mulgrew played with Betty for about half a year, maybe a little bit longer, and then after that, that's when he went with Woody Shaw.
Right. And then I think after that, he went with Tony, right? Tony Williams Quintet. He was with that group with Wallace and Ira Coleman and those guys, right?
Yeah,
so that came later.
Yes, but I'm telling you, Mulgrew's gig of life, because that's the reason why he left Betty and hurt Betty to her heart, because after coming out of John Hicks, she thought, she was like, yeah, I got another one. And he was there for a minute.
Yeah.
What actually happened was, when Mulgrew came in the band, it was for maybe one or two gigs. It was Kenny Washington, myself, and Mulgrew. And Betty was so happy. And then Kenny got the gig with Johnny Griffin. So he left. And so at that time, Greg Bandy joined the band. And so it was Mulgrew. We were in the band with Mulgrew for about, like I said, about maybe 8 months, maybe close to a year.
Yeah.
And then Mulgrew gave his notice and told Betty that he wanted to work with Woody Shaw. That was always one of the guys that was one of his idols. He wanted to work with Woody, and Betty, she begrudgingly, let him go and do it. But and so not along with recording that, making that recording with him with Bobby, he, we had a chance to play with Betty for a while, and that was really fun.
Man, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Curtis, I also wanted to ask you, man, about this choir director thing, this group, gospel group, ARC. Tell me about that, man. One of the interesting things your sister had mentioned to me about, just the background, singing in church and, your mother and gospel music. I mean, did that start with you way back then? Or how'd you get involved in like this choir, thing, man? I find it very interesting, for a jazz man,
No. I mean, most jazz people come from the spiritual background, especially for my generation. People forget, and Train's grandfather and great grandfather were both preachers.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think even Bobby's grandfather was a preacher, and my grandfather was way up in there deacon, and so gospel music. My mother was a great gospel singer.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And she, along with her sisters and a couple of other members, had a group called the Apostolic Singers.
Mm-hmm.
and they were great. My aunt played the organ with them, and she's still here with us. She's a monster.
That's beautiful, man.
So early on, that spirit, spirit filled music always resonated with me.
Yeah.
But coming up in the sanctified church, even when I started playing my bass, see, you couldn't play in the church unless you were saved, you know. So I was like, okay, And by the time it was time for me to be saved, I was already working at the Jetaway and the Galaxy Club
Yeah.
so but that don't mean I wasn't still, didn't want to be connected to the Creator. But so with that being said, the music, and this is the same grandfather who I told you built my first amplifier.
Right.
Okay, so that's what was my background in terms of the spiritual music and the gospel thing and the choir, as it were, because I can still hear my mother's and them singing on those Sunday mornings, especially first Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
They would do it, and it would be they would. I mean, my mother. Okay, I'm going to give you an example because when I talk about my mother and them singing, the great Shirley Caesar and Albertina Walker and all of those. Okay, my mother and her sisters used to be on the same shows with them. Whenever those groups, they used to call it the Gospel Caravan.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I don't like to use it, but the Chipman Circuit of the Gospel.
The circuit, yeah.
They would come and they would do what they would call singings. They didn't even call them concerts, they called them singings back then.
Yeah.
And on the bill would be the Mighty Clouds of Joy. Right. Back in the day, called another local group called the Sea Lord Seas. My mother and the Apostolic Singers. This would be, I'm going to give you one bill. I still remember seeing this play bill or this, whatever, the advert for this one. The Staple Singers.
Wow.
My mother and them used to go right at it with Mavis and all,
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, they would all come through. You got to remember, we're in Miami.
Hey, Curtis, I was going to ask you, what about Mahalia Jackson? Did she ever come through?
She probably did, but she never. Mahalia was on another part of the circuit. You got to remember, Mahalia wasn't on that circuit. She was on the next level of the circuit.
I got you.
I mean, she did more of the concert tour of that circuit, which would be the major, what would be considered mega churches now.
Yeah.
Mahalia would go to C.L. Franklin's church in Detroit. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the different churches in Chicago, and she she was the queen of that, So but everybody other than Mahalia was there though, and I'm sure she was in Miami, but but I'm just telling you, but I mean, like I said, everybody from Shirley Caesar to you name them, they all came through Miami because Miami is, the next major back then. Okay, you would go to Jacksonville and you would go to Tampa maybe and all that, but if you came to Florida and you didn't go to Miami, you didn't come to Florida.
Right.
And that wasn't just for Black artists, that was for everybody.
Everybody.
Back then, Miami was considered, if you watched the Jackie Gleason show, when the show came on, the way they introduced us, and from live from Miami Beach, the playground for the stars. Exactly what it was. Because at that time, you got to remember, Cuba was still wide open.
Mm-hmm.
So people would come to Miami as the layover to Havana. And then after they went down and partied and broke bad in Havana, they would come back to Miami. You didn't just fly from New York or New Jersey or wherever to Miami and then just go to Cuba, right to Cuba. No, you had to stop in Miami.
Right.
So it was a wide open town in that regard, and that's why there were so many good musicians that were able to come out of there at the time, because entertainment industry at the time was a part of the whole cachet, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Hey, man, something I wanted to do with you. I wanted to play a word association game. I'm going to name some musicians, and I want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind. There's no right or wrong answer.
But you were talking to me about the choir thing.
Yeah.
I kind of want to finish that.
Oh, yeah, please. Yeah, please do. Yeah, please do.
Fast forwarding to me coming to New York, I went through a phase of my life where I needed to seek some help to get on the right track.
Sure.
And I became associated with a place called ARC, the Addicts Rehabilitation Center.
Okay.
That ARC Choir. That's them for ARC.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. And that choir is the same choir where you hear that the song Jesus Walk that Kanye West sampled. Well, that's how that came about, from me learning from my mentor at that time, James Allen, who was the choir director and the founder of the ARC Gospel Choir and the founder of ARC. He, along with his partner, Richard Feimster. I was able to develop the style for making arrangement and arranging for a cappella choir. And what made that special is that they had a bass section. I could think of whatever bass lines I wanted to and get these guys to sing them. And so that made it really special for me. You got to remember, this Mr. Allen had this choir for at least maybe 20 years before I got there. At least 15 years, because he was a pillar in the rehabilitation of hundreds of thousands of people in Harlem, New York, and in Connecticut. People would come from all over to that facility to help them turn their lives around. So with that being said, the first day that I walked up to the facility, I saw this bus parked outside, and it said ARC Gospel Choir. I was like, "What? This is the rehab." So yeah, so I go in, and I meet this man, and he allowed me to work with his to babysit his baby, to work with his choir, and so I took what I had heard from my ancestors and from my youth and brought it to the table to help me to develop a style of arranging for this choir. And and I also must admit that I treated the choir like a big band. So my soprano sections, I would consider the trumpet section, the tenors, and the altos, I would consider, the saxophone section, and the baritones, I would consider the trombone section, and then I had a bass section. So it was really, really, really fun for me to be able to experiment with those sounds.
Yeah.
So that was how I became associated with being a choir director. I was able to tour with that group all over Europe, North Africa, Japan. The choir was world renowned and is world renowned. So once again, it was a privilege to be a part of that situation and learn that part of a musical a musical. I don't want to just call it, just call it a genre, because it's more than that. That musical sphere, if you will, of spirituals and gospel music that, once again, is still underappreciated. Right now, Skip Gates has used that piece along with others in his the Black Church piece that he's doing now. So, I've been able to get, and I get, give thanks for, when things were still, I guess, working right in his life, Kanye.
Yeah.
For being able to hear that, even though somebody brought it to him, there's a whole story behind that.
It's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, like I said, just something I wanted to share with you, and we can talk back and forth, are musicians that I just wanted to name, and just whatever comes to your mind, man. Bass players. We're going to start with Slam Stewart.
Oh, man. I was fortunate enough to be able, like I told you, to see and hear Slam play. Like maybe the second or third week I was in New York, I got a chance to hear Slam and to see him and to hear him. And probably one of the most phenomenal musicians that I've ever seen or hear play live in my life. He was a virtuoso.
Yeah. Beautiful.
He was a virtuoso. He was the epitome of class. Man, what an amazing musician. I mean, and still, until it was time for him to shine, he knew how to be the support. This guy, oh my goodness, what a monster. What I feel so blessed to be able to have seen and heard him. Slam Stewart was one of the greatest of all times, bar none, on any instrument. Just not,
Thanks for sharing. Yeah. Next name, Charles Mingus.
Mingus, I met the second day I was in New York.
You met Charles Mingus?
Yes.
Wow.
That's why I go back to the missing link. The second day I was in New York, maybe the second, third day at the most, Bobby was with Art at the time, and there was a concert at Avery Fisher Hall, and the bill that day was Art Blakey, maybe Dave Brubeck, Roy Haynes. They had a piano summit featuring Hank Jones, Sir Roland Hanna, Tommy Flanagan, a couple other people I'm trying to remember, John Lewis. Okay, so I'm gonna get back to that later. So I go, Bobby gets me in, I go with Bobby, I'm just hanging out. I'm not playing with everything. Like I said, this is my second or third day in New York. So I meet Babs Gonzalez on this same day. So Babs is kind of like, I'm hanging out with Babs a little bit, but I'm kind of like going on my own. So sure enough, I'm backstage and I see Mingus. And so I'm like, oh my goodness. So I walk up to him and I'm introducing myself. Mr. Mingus, my name is Curtis Lundy, and I'd like to, can you show me anything? And he goes, I don't play before I talk. I don't talk before I play. I said, oh my goodness. So I said, okay. So now you gotta remember, Mingus is at this time, Mingus is about 300 pounds, and serious about where he is. And so I said, yes, sir, Mr. Mingus. So I just started following him around, Because I mean, you know, okay, you call it what you were, starstruck, whatever you were. But I mean, this is Mingus.
Right.
So I'm following him around. So I'm following him. And he goes through these doors. And I hear this piano playing. And okay, so he goes through these doors. So I walk in right behind him. And in this room is Tommy Flanagan, Hank Jones, Roland Hanna, John Lewis.
Mm.
And they're sitting there playing. John Lewis, I think at the time was playing, you know, playing some of his stuff and everything. And so Mingus walks in the room and they see Mingus coming in. And Mingus goes straight to the piano and kind of nudges John Lewis. And Mingus sits down on the piano. And Mingus starts to play some Duke type stuff, you know, because Mingus loved Duke.
Yeah.
You know, so all of that orchestration and shit they do, Mingus had all that shit under his finger. You know, all of those things under his fingers. And, you know, so all these cats now, you know, you heard who I said, Hank, they all gather around and looking at Mingus and listening to Mingus play some piano.
And you're standing there watching all of this.
Yeah.
Dang.
You know, so that's what comes to mind. And then I see him and hear him play with the band, you know. And once again, you know, another virtuoso.
Yeah.
You know, so now you gotta remember, this is my first couple of weeks in New York. I see Mingus and Slam Stewart. You know, and I can't tell you who in between. Well, I can, but just, you know, just look at that scope.
Incredible, man. Incredible. Next name, Paul Chambers.
Well, that's, you know, my mentor. I love Paul. Paul is everything to me. Paul is you know, that's the cat. You know, that's who I like to say would be the person that the spirit that I invoke and try to emulate in what I do as a bass player in terms of function.
Yeah.
You know, and if you listen to some of your major jazz records of that time, he was playing bass. You know, you know, that whole series of Miles from Prestige to Columbia, all of those records. Blues and Abstract Truth. The We Three with Phineas Newborn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another musician you played with, man. That's incredible. You know, those are all of the cats, man. You work with all those dudes, man. Phineas Newborn.
Yes, but see that, like I said, at that time, you know, cats, we all used to network. I was able to work with Phineas through James Williams' connection.
Oh, another great pianist. Oh man, James Williams.
Yeah, James got connected me to that situation. And it was, well, I mean, you know, once again, you know, you got to remember some of these times and some of these guys, especially then that I was playing with, I was sitting there like, you know, first of all, just in awe of these guys and just being able to be on the same bandstand with these cats. And some of those cats, you know, they didn't take no prisoners, you know, they didn't play down to your level, you know.
Yeah.
You know, you had to be, you know, yeah. So those were challenging times, you know, that helped shape and mold, you know, really help shape and mold me.
Yeah. Next name, Oscar Pettiford.
Well, I have a saying: JB, OP, and PC.
Oh man.
Okay, that's the first three for me.
Then
there's RC, you know, and I would be remiss if I left out Sam.
Oh yeah, Sam is another bad cat. Yeah, man. Yeah.
OP, Clarity, once again, virtuoso. Composition, you know, taking the bass player to the composer, bringing them to the composer table. Oscar Pettiford was a great, great composer.
Yeah.
And also, you know, records with Miles. People forget, you know, as a sideman, some of the major contributions he made. But yeah, the technique on the instrument, you know, because Paul respected and loved Oscar a lot, you know, and I think that was one of his main influences. So that Oscar is in the lineage, and Paul is in the lineage of Oscar, you know, and so I mean, you know, of course, his, you know, Tricketism, but then the General Art of Love. There's the Oscar Pettiford big band stuff. Oscar Pettiford was, you know, that's you know, no Oscar, you know, no Mingus, no, you know what I mean. Oscar took it to that level, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about a couple other bass players like Ron Carter, you know, who's the most recorded bass player. Ron's done everything. A couple other bass players I wanted to hit. Buster Williams.
Buster, you know, probably, you know, one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah.
And Buster's range is phenomenal in terms of situations that he, you know, you know, I mean, if you don't know, and a lot of people don't know, you know, Buster's first gig on the road was at Gene Ammons.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, you know, I mean, what does that tell you there? You know, and you know, sound and being the next level of you know, who's in the pecking order. You know, Ron, Buster, Cecil. You can't forget cats though, like, you know, within that same realm, you know, I have to back up a little bit and mention Milt Hinton.
Oh wow. Yeah, of course, Milt Hinton. Yes,
Yeah.
without question. Without question.
Milt started the whole brothers in the studio making records.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was ushered in by Jackie Gleason. A lot of people don't know that story, but Milt told me that story himself.
Mm-hmm.
And Jackie Gleason saw him walking on the street one day in New York with his bass, and he's, you know, kind of probably fascinated with him, and probably followed him into a session or whatever, where he was playing. And so I think he even maybe saw Milton reading some music, and so he asked him, "Hey, do you know, can you know, you can read this music, you can do this?" And Milt said yes. And so Jackie Gleason recommended him on a record date, and that's what got Milt started in the game.
Wow. Got another couple names for you. Butch Warren.
Oh, Butch, one of the most underrated, unheralded bass players ever. Butch, people forget he played with Monk.
That's right.
And the records that he made with Dexter are some of my favorites.
Yeah. Yeah.
A Swinging Affair, to
Oh,
name.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Soy Khalifa.
Right.
And the Backbone.
That's on Blue Note, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Butch Warren, what a bass player. What, you know, I got a chance to meet and know Butch, at a distance a little bit, but also up front a couple of times. And what a treasure, Butch Warren. Yeah.
Yeah, got another name for you, Reggie Workman.
Oh yeah, I call him the working man. Reggie's always on up to something. He's a special cat. Reggie. Reggie's behind the scenes, and he's always getting something done. He's once again underappreciated in terms of his contribution, especially during that time. When you think of the range from being in the quartet with Train all the way into all those great records that he did with Wayne.
Mm.
And I would have to mention, once again, getting a little bit into, and I don't want to minimize it by saying politics, but the sphere of what's happening in the music today. You see, it's amazing that all of those great classic, just like classical music, those great classic records that were made during the Blue Note and Prestige and Landmark era, those records, a lot of those records were record dates.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that music was never ever played, sometimes ever again after those dates in a live setting. So I don't want to be looked down upon or feel bad when I want to create, let's say, a rendition of one of those songs that was made in the 60s and the late 50s that was swinging and nobody heard maybe but once or twice in a live setting, But when I do it as a Black man and as a Black musician, a jazz musician, I'm not thinking, I'm not trying to reach and grow in another way. Instead of giving an homage and tribute as the classical musician does to Beethoven and
Right.
Bach and Brahms, and you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Okay, so that part of the game, I'm a little disillusioned with, if you will. Also, so there's a lot of things that I feel like the music, once again, is underappreciated, overlooked, and we need to come together and as a united front once again and say something about it and make try to make some changes in that regards, because this music deserves to be listened to and appreciated and sold, in a way, instead of when you want to reach a certain demographic, then you want to use the name of jazz or the music of jazz. And you use the name of jazz in so many different ways until it's jazzercise and jazz. When you want to reach a certain demographic, then it's okay. But other than that, do you really support the music? And I want to give a shout out.
It's powerful what you just said, man. I'm thinking about something. They asked Miles Davis in an interview, about jazz. And Miles says, the music I play isn't jazz, it's social music.
Right.
And some look at jazz as sort of a dirty word. I talked to Gary Bartz about it. He said, don't even mention that word jazz to me. He said, that's a dirty word. But no, I appreciate, man, what you're sharing. And this is beautiful. I just want to add another. There's so many great bass players, but I want to add another bass player to that list, and his name is Curtis Lundy, who's carried on the tradition, who's worked with many of the greats, and has that mindset of tradition and everything that's come before him, during and after, man. And I appreciate you for that. And I want to thank you for being on Jazz Talk today. It's been really enlightening. And hang on, I'm about to close out the show. Well, you've heard it from the great Curtis Lundy. And as the saying goes, if the music grooves and makes you move, it must be jazz. I'm Preston Williams with Jazz Talk signing off. Peace.